Why the Boston Red Sox are still a playoff team despite a tough road trip in San Diego and Houston.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I'm here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part, it's all completely free. So make sure that you continue to tune in because Locked On is your team every single day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Welcome to the show. It's Thursday, almost the end of the week. So that's a positive, but the Red Sox had a very frustrating week, dropping 2 of 3 in San Diego and then dropping 2 of 3 in Houston. So definitely not an ideal road trip for the Red Sox to have been on. They have shown a lot of struggle over these last few days. And while they went and scored 14 runs in the game on Tuesday night, then they go into last night and they can only score 1 run. So it's baseball. That's how it works. It's very, very weird. But are the Red Sox still a playoff team despite all of that struggle? Going to be talking about that on today's show, as well as a first baseman who could come to the Red Sox and save the day for the rest of this season, and just the keys down the stretch for this Red Sox team. So are the Boston Red Sox still a playoff team? Yes. Absolutely. They have overall been playing good baseball. And you have to keep in mind that every team goes through struggle. It's a long season and every team has stretches in which they aren't playing well. They can't get the bats going and nothing seems to be going right. And the Red Sox are just in a bit of a slump right now. They have struggled on the road, though, and you could argue that they cannot beat good teams on the road. And that has been a serious problem for this Red Sox team this season. If you look at even just right after the All-Star break, when they went to Chicago to play the Cubs and they lost that series, dropped 2 of 3. Then they went to Philly and dropped 2 of 3 against the Phillies. So that was a road trip that was tough. Then they went and they played at home and they were playing really good baseball. They beat the Dodgers at home. They swept the Astros at home. So they were riding a little bit of a high at that point because they were showing that they can compete with the best teams that the sport has to offer. But then you go back on the road and they can't win either series against the Padres or the Astros. So it poses a question of, sure, the Red Sox can beat the good teams, but does it have to be at home? Are they incapable of beating good teams on the road? And if you can't beat good teams on the road, you're going to have a very tough time in the playoffs. Here is why the Red Sox are still a playoff team, despite the fact that they struggled in these 2 series. Their chemistry is through the roof right now. These guys are always talking about how much they enjoy being together and they just enjoy winning baseball games together. And you could see last night the frustration on Alex Bregman's face when the Red Sox were losing and things were just not going their way. They hate losing. And if you don't feel like they are going to bounce back from this, then you haven't been watching the Red Sox as of the second half of the season. They are going to bounce back. They're going back home where they have played very good baseball and they are playing a Marlins team that is inferior to them. So they really should win that series pretty handily against the Marlins. Emphasis on the word should, because you never know with baseball. But they have a group of guys who are incredibly talented. One of the biggest reasons why they lost this series against the Astros was because Garrett Crochet had a very rare bad outing. He straight up said, this was my worst outing in a Red Sox uniform. And he wasn't wrong. He got smacked around for 4 innings. And had Garrett Crochet pitched to some level of normalcy of what we're used to seeing from him, the Red Sox win game 1 of that series, and they won game 2 by a 14-1 score. And then they lost game 3, couldn't really get the offense going, but they lost by 1 run with Garrett Crochet on the mound. And they were down 7-2 in that game. And they ended up storming back late and making it a 7-6 game. Non-playoff teams don't do that. Non-playoff teams completely fold under that type of pressure and they just lose 8-2 or something along those lines, and they don't come storming back. The Red Sox are a resilient baseball team, and despite the fact that their ace didn't pitch well, the offense picked him up a little bit and said, hey, listen, it's okay, we got you. And even though they fell short, which is obviously unfortunate, they still again showed that they could make it competitive. And again, they would have won that series had Garrett Crochet been himself, given how many runs the offense scored. So woulda, coulda, shoulda, I know, but I had this exact same chat after the Red Sox played that series against the Phillies, and everybody was really frustrated because the Red Sox had that big 10-game win streak going into the All-Star break. Then they come out of the break and they struggle against the Cubs and the Phillies, and people were like, here we go again. This is the same old Red Sox that completely falls apart in the second half. But that just wasn't the case, because after that Phillies series, they were able to bounce back. And there was a notable thing about that Phillies series, because yes, they lost a series on the road against a tough team, but they made that series competitive by taking them to extra innings in game one. The Phillies needed extra innings to beat the Red Sox in the first game of that series. And then the Red Sox pulled off a win in game three of that series. They didn't fold and let themselves get swept. When you are playing very good baseball teams on the road, yes, you go into that series hoping to win, but you're not really expecting to, because home field advantage is a real thing. And there's a reason that those teams are the best at what they do, because they win a lot on their home field. The Astros are a really good example, who got swept by the Red Sox at Fenway, but then held their ground on their home field, because that is where they play their best baseball. And you know what? The Red Sox were able to clinch the season series against the Astros, something they haven't done in years, because the Astros have typically owned the Red Sox head to head. So this is still a playoff team. If you think of all of those reasons, that the Red Sox are still making series competitive, even when they are unable to win those series. Again, even against the Padres, they smoked the Padres in game one of that series 10-2 with Walker Buehler on the mound. And then in game two of that series, they also made that one competitive. They lost on a walk-off and extra innings. So you take those first two games, those extra inning games really can go either way. It is tough for the Red Sox when they play extra innings on the road, because they struggle to close out those games. And a lot of times they end up losing those games. But again, they ended up losing game three, so they lost the series. But ultimately, if you really look deep into that series, it wasn't as bad as it looked, because it was another really good baseball team that the Red Sox went tooth and nails against on the road in San Diego. So those are all positive signs that the Red Sox 100% are still a playoff team. This was a bad bump in the road. The Red Sox have a lot of talent. You're not going to see their ace struggle that way again. And you have guys who are going to continue to step up. Roman Anthony had a rough game last night at the plate, in which he ended up striking out 3 times in 4 at-bats, after he had just walked 4 times and hit a home run in the previous game. So every player has games where they struggle. And the thing that made game 3 a little bit more painful was because so many players had a great offensive game the night before. And statistically, it's very challenging for a player to stay that consistent in terms of their performance at the plate as regularly. So because so many guys had such a strong performance offensively on Tuesday night going into Wednesday night, it was tough for those guys to all step up again on offense. So Roman Anthony is not going to continue to have games in which he strikes out most of the times that he's at the plate. It just wasn't his night. He does not see left-handed sliders very well at all. That's a pitch that he really struggles with a lot. And it's something that over the rest of his career, I'm hoping he continues to develop and improves on. But the idea is that the Red Sox are not perfect, and they are going to have games where they can't get the offense going, but that doesn't mean this is who they are. They have really showed their resilience against the best teams in the sport, and they are not going to go down without a fight. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they are still 10 games over 500 right now at 66-56. They are still in a playoff spot. They are currently in the second wild card spot, with the Yankees shortly behind them in the third wild card spot. But there's no need to panic about where the Red Sox are at after this series that they just played and the series before it. It was a tough road trip. We know that, but the playoff teams are teams that are able to bounce back. And the Red Sox in the second half of the season have shown that they can bounce back. And they have a lot of key players who are going to help them down the stretch. Alex Bregman is a player they are paying lots of money for. He has a history of coming up big in the biggest moments when the Red Sox really need a big hit or they really need a win. You have Alex Bregman who's going to pick up your team. The Boston Red Sox are a playoff team in 2025. Do they need to get better against the good teams on the road? Absolutely. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that later on today's show, but I'm not looking at this road trip and saying that the Red Sox are frauds and it means they are not a playoff team. They have shown that they can be competitive against the best teams in the sport, and that's what's important because at the end of the day, once the playoffs hit, it doesn't matter what you did in the regular season. They lost that series in San Diego. Okay, they make it to the World Series and they play San Diego again, that all gets thrown out the window. So what matters is the fact that the Red Sox are resilient and they stay competitive no matter what. That's the recipe for being a playoff team. Coming up, though, if they want to be a playoff team, there is a potential player that could save their season, and I'm going to be discussing him next. I know it's hard to manage your money sometimes. I get stressed over that because it's really hard to manage all of your financial accounts or what you're paying for. That's why there's Monarch Money, which is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Essentially, Monarch does all the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in just minutes and be able to get smart categorization of your spending so that you know if you're wasting money on things you shouldn't be wasting money on. For example, mine, a lot of it was subscription services that I didn't really need, and Monarch helped me identify that and get rid of some of it, so I'm saving a lot more money now. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. It's a great way to save money. The Red Sox had a frustrating loss last night against the Houston Astros. They just couldn't get a lot going offensively. They had opportunities, but they went just 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position and left 8 on base. They faced Hunter Brown from the Astros, who is a very strong pitcher. He threw 6 2/3 innings, giving up 6 hits and 1 earned run with 3 walks and 4 strikeouts. And the Red Sox were putting some pressure on him. He did throw 93 pitches and they were trying to work his pitch count, but they couldn't really get to him. And ultimately, the Red Sox offense just could not really get it done. And that happens. And it's frustrating, but every team goes through days where their offense is not fully there. And the Red Sox definitely have an offensive powerhouse, as we've seen, that they can just explode at any time like they did in the middle game of this series when they scored 14 runs. And that could happen for the Red Sox on any given night, but the problem is that they're not always consistent with that, but they could improve the offense even more. Now that the trade deadline is over, there obviously can't be a lot of drastic moves that are made for teams to improve, but what can be done is players who get waived being added to teams. So, for example, the Red Sox have been needing help at first base for the entire season after Tristan Casas went down for the season with that patellar tendon rupture, which was very brutal and heartbreaking to watch as a fan, and it was only about a month into the season. So they called up Abraham Toro, and he's been primarily holding it down, platooning with Romy Gonzalez, but they've also had Romy spend some time at second base now with Marcelo Meyer injured. So Abraham Toro primarily has been pulling the weight at first base, but he has been slumping massively as of late. When he first got called up to the Red Sox, was on a roll and was one of their biggest contributors offensively. And for the first couple months, he was doing that. But as of late, he hasn't been able to make the same kind of contact that he had been making previously. And he just hasn't been able to put together as productive at-bats as he was before. But there are still waivers that remain. And the question becomes, can the Red Sox still upgrade the first base position prior to the playoffs? And the answer is yes. Josh Bell. He is an example of a player that could potentially be there for the taking for the Red Sox. Now, I'm not making any promises here because he may not get waived, but if he does, the Red Sox absolutely should snatch him. He's 32 years old, and he did get off to a brutal start and struggled through the first 3 months of the season. But since the start of July, he slashed a stat line of a 333 batting average, 445 on base percentage, and 525 slugging over 30 games. He has a 176 WRC plus, which is good for 8th in the majors in that span, and would lead all Red Sox players. When things are going well for him at the plate, he can be a legitimate threat, which is something that this Red Sox team could desperately use. Not to mention, he's also a major upgrade over Toro, and it literally wouldn't cost the Red Sox anything other than money down the stretch based on what he's owed. Now, just for reference with his stats, so that you know how good he is, WRC plus essentially means weighted runs created plus. So it's a complex offensive stat that essentially measures a player's total offensive production, which is adjusted both for park factors and the league's run scoring environment. So essentially what it does is it standardizes a player's offensive output to a scale where 100 is considered league average, allowing for easy comparison across different eras and ballparks. So if 100 is considered league average, his is 176. So he's well above that. So he's somebody who could significantly help the Red Sox. When you compare Bell to Abraham Toro since July 1st, it truly makes this acquisition a no-brainer if you are the Boston Red Sox, because in that 30 games where he's slashing that competitive stat line of 333, 445, 525, he also has 4 home runs in that span. As for Abraham Toro, in that same time span since July 1st, he's been slashing 200 with a 259 on base percentage, 295 slugging, and 554 OPS with only 2 home runs. So the comparison between the two is vast. It's pretty clear that Bell right now, with where he's at in the second half of the season, is having a lot more success than Toro is. So it really causes the wheels to turn of saying this is a veteran who is a proven, reliable first baseman. And if the Red Sox don't trust their platoon down the stretch, because obviously the Marcelo Meyer situation is unfortunate, so second base is likely a lot of where Romey's going to spend his time, which means that Toro will remain most likely as the lone first baseman. But if they feel like they don't trust that and the platoon of him and potentially Romey at first base down the stretch, or they don't feel like Toro's value is going to increase again, this is a great time to improve that part of the roster, because first base was an area of need for the Red Sox at the trade deadline. They decided not to go and acquire a first baseman at that point. I don't know that they didn't like the market. That could have been the factor in that decision, that maybe they just felt like the first basemen that were on the market were a little bit too expensive. So they could have said, all right, we're just going to hold off and wait until the offseason. We are fine with what we have. But this is a golden opportunity for the Red Sox to upgrade first base without having to make a trade for a guy. Now, this only will work if the Nationals do decide to waive Bell. But it is possible, because teams that are out of contention do tend to waive veterans to clear their books and let their young players get some time on the field and in the box, so that they can get some exposure for next year and beyond, so that they can really see what they have moving forward for the future. With the Nationals being firmly out of contention right now with a record of 47-72, them waiving Bell and the Red Sox getting him may not be as far-fetched as it feels like it might be. Again, a lot of things have to come into play for that. The Nationals have to decide, hey, we're going to waive Josh Bell. He has to be able to last long enough for the Red Sox to say, okay, we're going to snag him. they would have to jump on it immediately. And third, the Red Sox would have to know we want this guy, and then they make that decision to snag him. So there are factors in this. Nothing's automatic here. But what I will say is that there's no question that acquiring Josh Bell now would make the Red Sox roster a lot better and would make it feel more like that no doubt playoff team. Because while I do like certain aspects of Toro's game and I really like the contributions that he made to this Red Sox team in the first half, it's hard to sit here and say that he's somebody who the Red Sox should be looking to replace, because you can't possibly see what he's been doing in the second half of the season and say he's too valuable for the Red Sox to ship out or just replace down the stretch. Because if you can get somebody who is having the second half that Josh Bell is having, it just makes a lot of sense if you're the Boston Red Sox to do that right now, especially because of the fact that we know that first base is a blatant hole for the Red Sox in the roster right now. And if they get Josh Bell to play that position, not only do you know you're getting some good defense there from a guy who you can rely on for the rest of the season to be your everyday first baseman, but you're also getting a guy who at the plate has been coming up really big for the Nationals right now. So if you think about it, there's not really a huge point in the Nationals keeping him on their roster right now, because it's not like he's helping them get into contention for a playoff spot, because they're so far out of it right now that they might as well experiment with what they have in their young players and see for the future what things are looking like for those players. So it makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox. The question is just going to be, will the Nationals decide to waive him? And if so, is this a player that the Red Sox are going to be interested in or not? It just feels like it makes too much sense. Regardless, even if the Nationals decide they're going to waive him, he definitely will be picked up by somebody, because he's too talented to not, and he's too much of a veteran with experience to where there wouldn't be at least one team out there that feels like he can help them make a big playoff push. So it'll be interesting to see if the Red Sox decide that they want to go in that direction, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, because, hey, he could be a huge key for the Red Sox as they look to clinch a playoff spot. And what are some other keys for this team down the stretch? I'm going to be discussing that next. Just a reminder that Locked On Red Sox is available on YouTube or any other podcast platform Monday through Friday. You can catch me talking about all things related to this Boston Red Sox team. So make sure that you subscribe and you follow the show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox for more Red Sox news. You can follow me, Gabby, on Twitter also at Gabby Maljanian, or on Instagram at Gabby_Maljanian10, where I will also be posting lots of things about the Red Sox. So make sure you stay connected in that way, but I am here for you every day. And so is MLB Game Night. While you make Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day, you can make this awesome show your second listen. It's available on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can get local analysis on a national scale every single night until a World Series champion is crowned. It's our Locked On host going over every single game, every single night, to keep you in the loop so that you don't have to keep checking ESPN every night to make sure the Blue Jays lost and the Yankees lost, and just keep going through all of your scores. You can hear from some of the best in this industry as they go over the biggest moments that took place across Major League Baseball. So make sure that you make that your second listen of every day after you finish listening to Locked On Red Sox. 4-1 was the final score in last night's Red Sox game against the Astros. A frustrating loss for Boston to go along with what has been a lot of frustrating losses as of late. They have struggled on the road against good teams. And that is going to be a big key for this Red Sox team down the stretch, is figuring out how to win more games on the road. They are under 500 in terms of their record on the road, and they are well over 500 with their record at home, which obviously you do want to play your best baseball at home home, since that's where you spend most of your time. And in the last couple seasons, the Red Sox struggled to win at Fenway, and that was what really held them back when it came to making the playoffs. Because they play so well at home, that is something that's going to help them make the playoffs this year, because it's very difficult to beat the Red Sox at Fenway, and it's very rare that you see a team make the playoffs and lose a lot of home games because they spend the majority of their time there. That's where you have to win. So that's why I feel confident still that the Red Sox are a playoff team despite their road struggles. But that is going to be a key for them in the postseason if they want to be taken seriously as a contender this year, is they have to figure out how to beat good teams at other ballparks. I'm looking at teams like the Padres, the Dodgers, the Astros, or even other American League teams that they could see in the playoffs, like the Tigers. That's another really good example. Those are types of teams that the Red Sox could potentially face in the playoffs. And if they do, they have to figure out how to win games on the road, because I'm sorry, you're going to have to go on the road. You are likely not going to win your division. So therefore, you are going to be a wild card team, which means not necessarily having home field advantage. The first round you could, depending on where you actually finish in the wild card standings, but beyond that, you are going to be going on the road for a lot of games, and it's going to be a grind, and they have to figure out how to win those games, whether it's blocking out the crowd or just taking better at bats on the road, or the pitchers being able to relax when they're on the road and not feel so jittery. They have to figure out as a team how they can win games on the road, especially close games in extra innings, close one-run games in the ninth inning. How do they go about trying to close out more of those games? That's going to be a huge key for the Red Sox down the stretch here, as well as the health and effectiveness of their pitching staff. Walker Buehler is a big one, who I mentioned had a great outing against the Padres, but then went back and didn't have the best outing against the Astros. And because he hasn't been able to maintain this level of consistency, it's going to be hard to rely on him down the stretch to help the Red Sox get wins a lot. And while I do see him being more of a bullpen piece when it comes to the playoffs, right now he is part of the rotation, and the Red Sox are going to need him to help make a playoff push. So him being able to be more consistent is going to be a key for this Red Sox team down the stretch, as well as Lucas Giolito and Brian Bayo being able to maintain what they're doing on the mound. Because overall, obviously not every single start has been perfect by any means, but overall, Bayo and Giolito have been giving the Red Sox what they need as a solid number 2 and number 3 starter in that rotation. Now, while I really do like what I've seen from them, my worry is that at some point they could crash and burn. And I hope that doesn't happen, especially with Giolito, who you kind of feel like you could see potentially a collapse coming at some point because of all the injuries he's battled, and the fact that he does have some starts that have been a little bit dicey, and him being back to pitch a full season for the first time in a while could impact things in the last month or so. So he is going to be a key factor, is can he be consistent when it comes to his ability to contribute on the mound. And there's going to need to be a lot more contribution from a guy like Abraham Toro, who I mentioned. If the Red Sox decide they are not going to claim a first baseman off waivers, Josh Bell, for example, if he does get waived by the Nationals, Abraham Toro is going to have to step up in his role and be the first baseman that the Red Sox need in the playoffs. If you look at this Red Sox team right now, they absolutely have the potential to be a team that could go all the way, or they could be a team that misses the playoffs, or they could be a team that loses in the first round. This is a team that is capable of doing any of those things, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of them happened, but certain players have to maintain consistency. Dustin May is another great example, had a lights-out outing against the Astros, but struggled in his first outing with the Boston Red Sox, which was at Fenway. So there's a lot of things that have to go right for the Red Sox in order for them to be taken seriously as a legitimate contender. And another huge one is the offense continuing to take the approach that they're taking now, which is small ball and trying to hit for contact and not necessarily swinging for the fences and just trying to hit for power. They have approach their at-bats a lot more lately in terms of the mindset of good things happen when you put the ball in play. And we're seeing less strikeouts because of it, and a lot more plate discipline from a lot of these guys And that's going to be a factor down the stretch that the Red Sox are going to have to utilize. They cannot resort to getting super swing happy and trying to get desperate and hit a home run every time they're up there, because we have seen the Red Sox as a team take that approach at the plate and they end up striking out at an excessively high rate. Now that they have been able to improve on that a little bit, and they've been able to show as an entire team a little bit more plate discipline and resiliency, that's something that makes the Red Sox a very dangerous team. That's something that makes the Red Sox hitters very tough to pitch to. That's something that is going to get the Red Sox very far, is if they continue to put that pressure on opposing pitchers. So they need to be able to continue to do all of that. But overall, this is a team that feels like they have the potential. Dustin May even said it on the broadcast last night that he feels like the Red Sox have a lot of the pieces to be able to make a deep run, and they believe in themselves, which is the most important thing. Belief in themselves and clubhouse culture. Both of those things are very high right now for the Red Sox. So if they can just keep up some of those logistical things, they will be a team that can go very far. And I know it's easier said than done to just say, yeah, they have to maintain this offensive mindset, but it's true. If they keep telling themselves, I'm going to try to just make contact and put the ball in play, they will put together very productive at-bats. They'll be able to steal bases. They'll be able to put a pressure on the opposing pitcher without feeling like they're striking out at as consistent of a rate. So they will continue to see that difference in the way they approach their game. So lots to look forward to. I know it was a tough road trip, but they will 100% bounce back, and that starts tomorrow against the Marlins. So keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.